I dare you, wise guy. Why don't you come down here in front of this audience on the stage and entertain?
I should.
Oh, you should. Can you sing?
No.
Can you dance?
No.
Can you get laughs?
No.
Then what can you do?
Just what you're doing.
Hecklers are the streakers of comedy. They'll interrupt a comedian in the middle of a joke to flash their verbal appendage in the comedian's face. They're a hot bloody nightmare and threaten to take a show off the rails faster than a train going off the tracks. Unfortunately, they also make stand-up unique and at times can be unbelievably funny.
This ain't Johnny Carson, motherfucker.
So in this video we'll look at the different types of hecklers, why they heckle, and what you can do to respond, without losing your cool.
Oh, get on up here, motherfucker!
And apologies, but a lot of heckler videos are not of the best quality. They're more like potato quality. So most of this video will look like some pixelated spud has tried to film Cloverfield on a 1996 Sony camcorder. But hey, you work with what you've got.
Hey, Heckler, come here.
What are you gonna do, sucko? Bore me to death?
Wait a minute.
Surprise, auto-tune is the best auto-tune.
So first things first, are hecklers really that bad? Well, yeah.
The number one thing about hecklers is 100% of them are douchebags.
Comedians hate hecklers more than magicians, death, and maybe even Carrot Top. They throw a comedian off their rhythm, interrupting a performance that is precisely timed and structured.
I had been thinking of a bunch of jokes and I wrote out an act that lasts about an hour, and it didn't include you yelling crap.
We love it. We love having the flow of a joke interrupted right at the punchline. That's great. Please keep shouting out.
In a closed letter to myself about heckling, thievery, and rape jokes, Patton Oswalt addresses the misguided idea that comedians love hecklers because they make shows more memorable, saying, no, they prevent a show from being a show. Comedians love doing the original material they wrote and connecting with an entire audience, not verbally sparring with one cretin while the rest of the audience rewires itself as a hate-fueled crowd beast. It's all fun and games, but the effect can be scarring. A heckler can leave a comedian sucking their thumb in the fetal position for weeks on end. James Acaster was so traumatized by a group of Scottish hecklers that he made it the corner piece of one of his shows.
How was the comedy show? Not good. Chucked us out for laughing. What? A comedy? You were just doing a normal laugh? Yeah, you know when I go, you're fucking shit, mate, that one. Didn't like it.
Legend has it Richard Pryor became so enraged with a heckler in a place called Cafe War that he stabbed him with a fork. Michael Richards? We don't need to talk about Michael Richards.
Whew. Niggas having a bad set. Hang in there, Kramer. Don't let him break you, Kramer.
If any story highlights the damage a heckler can do, listen to this depressing tale from Stuart Lee about a group of drunk hecklers in New Zealand. Sure enough, within a few minutes, the show was sabotaged. The man began jumping into crucial little spaces between feed lines and punchlines, with his own attempts at payoffs that were not as funny as mine and usually reactionary in nature. Of course, afterwards they all want to buy you drinks, and genuinely seem to feel their interruptions have done you some kind of favour. They didn't even know what they had done. They thought they had improved the show.
Think about that for 2 minutes and tell me you don't want to walk into the ocean.
Okay, you get the idea. If a crummy hotel room boils a comedian's blood, then a heckler turns it into a kind of volcanic lava. But the question remains, how do you deal with them? Well, first it's important to identify what kind of heckler you're dealing with. After all, not all hecklers are attention-seeking egomaniacs hell-bent on chaos and destruction. I've narrowed the hecklers down into 3 main categories. There are variations within each, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll roll with these. First up,
Yeah, I almost forgot. Gerald!
Not all hecklers are the evil cretins trying to derail a set. Some of them just don't know any better. Whether it's randomly blurting out a word that a joke made them think of.
I get Saturday Night Live, okay?
Church lady.
Or turning around to loudly talk to their friends.
You're still fucking talking. You are the two dumbest I've ever seen in my life.
These hecklers don't really know they're heckling and can throw a comedian off balance through sheer obliviousness.
Well, I saw you earlier and you were chatting and you're on your goddamn cell phone. I was trying to tell my jihad jokes. It's a bit rude if you ask me.
I think the big thing is these hecklers usually haven't seen much stand-up live and don't really know how it works. This is at its worst when the heckler treats a comedian's set like an open conversation instead of a rhetorical performance, making random comments that stall the momentum of the show.
Yeah, Jim. Gymnasium. I don't know what I've started here. No, you can just talk to the comedian anytime. If you don't follow something, then just ask them what they say. Could you please clarify that premise?
Now, I'm reticent to say this, but the idea that someone would want to heckle isn't all that stupid. It's worth noting that more structured comedians like Tim Vine or Mitch Hedberg don't get heckled nearly as often, which I think is because the audience can clearly see it's a performance. There are clear setups and punchlines, and only an absolute moron would think it would be cool to interrupt. We'll get to them in a minute. When a comedian's approach is more conversational, however, well, you're more likely to start one too. After all, if a comedian wants to look like they're simply chatting to the audience, it's not that insane to think that someone might think it's okay to talk back.
The audience feels like you're just having a conversation with them. And a conversation is two ways.
The trick worked.
Yeah, exactly. You're so conversational that the audience feels that they're in a conversation with you. And they respond to what you're saying.
Yeah.
As a result, I have a bit of pity for these hecklers. They either have no idea how frustrating they're being, or simply don't know that this isn't a two-way art form. They may be ignorant, but they're not malicious, and should be treated more courteously than the other heathens on our list. Which brings us to... Some hecklers aren't content to simply let the comedian tell the jokes and want to tell some of their own.
Ellsworth Beast Minor. I have a detention book.
Typical symptoms of this heckler include yelling out their own punchlines, trying to riff with the comedian, or even just yelling out a random compliment, which does genuinely happen.
What'd you say, man? Thanks, bro. A weird, timid heckle. Yo, motherfucker! Your haircut's adequate!
I would also include those whooping idiots that want to stamp their mark on the gig by performing the mating call of a castrated chicken.
I have not got a clue.
These hecklers are obviously after a good time, and in their heads may think they're helping the comedian out. What they're actually doing is threatening the comedian's control of the room and putting the spotlight on themselves. Stephen Hofstetter claims these are the worst hecklers, disguising themselves as good Samaritans when they're actually desperate attention seekers.
You're a social terrorist. You have a bigger need for attention than I do. At least I worked at it and got on television. You just be in the darkness and shit.
This is true, and on the dark end of the spectrum are the Muppets that ruined Stuart Lee's show. However, they can also be playful, and for the savvy comedian can be turned into nuggets of comedy gold. If they're so desperate for attention, give them more than they can handle, or make what they've said seem so ridiculous that they wish they never opened their mouths. More on that in a minute.
Imagine coming home to that. What was that, ma'am? What? There's your representative right there. There's your gender cop.
Which brings us to our final heckler.
You stupid little Oh, you think you're a big man? Shoes! Well, you're not! You're nothing but a
These are the hecklers comedians see in their nightmares, the wild lizard-eyed demon spawn that want to tear the comedian limb from limb and burn the venue to the ground. They're the hecklers Louis Anderson refers to when he says this.
I always say people watch comedy for the same reason they watch cliff diving. They want to see someone hit the cliff.
Unlike the other hecklers, this one is obviously hostile. They're usually brimming with bitterness and resentment and want someone else to fail to feel better about themselves.
That's not my job to pull your misery from inside your gut. I don't know what happened to you. I can't make the things you're still dealing with from when you were 6 come out in laughter.
Part of them believes if they were on stage, they would do a better job than the comedian.
I've got loads of good jokes.
Yeah.
Or they feel so personally offended by something the comedian says that they want everyone to know just how personally offended they are.
No, you were right the first time. It is a clusterfuck.
But you're the queen of the clusterfuck. I worship you.
They are the drunkest, angriest, and probably dumbest hecklers, and it requires deft manipulation to stop the comedian from experiencing a pretty gruesome death. Unless you're Joan Rivers, in which case, just continue being Joan Rivers.
And just in case you can hear me in the hallway, I lived for 9 years with a man with one leg. Okay, you asshole, and we're gonna talk about what it's like to have a man with one leg who lost it in World War II and never went back to get it, because that's fucking littering.
Okay, so now we have our enemy types. How do we handle them? Well, the most popular route is to go all guns blazing. Heckler videos, particularly the compilations you see on YouTube, usually end with the audience member getting roasted, toasted, grilled, or whatever adjective Burger King would use in a close-up to sell beef burgers.
Meat.
One of the best ways to go about this is what I would call the witty one-liner. The heckler yells something out, then the comedian, faster than the speed of light, delivers a knockout blow so concise and funny, it puts the heckler in the emergency room.
Anyway, we're recording a DVD, right? Don't make me go into the edit and fucking zoom right in to your wee fucking face and drag it right in the recycle bin. Alright?
Although it would be wonderful if comedians invented all these witty responses on the spot, I think most comedians have a variety of one-liners up their sleeve which can be deployed when a pesky heckler pokes their head above ground. Kind of like having a loaded shotgun in the corner of your room in case a zombie starts to climb through the window. Andrew Conway, who wrote a document for the International Journal of Verbal Aggression outlining all the basic put-downs and responses comedians use against hecklers, agrees, saying a successful comedian will usually have a large repertoire of lines, and will attempt to choose one that fits the situation, as this will make the response appear improvised.
And the thing with stand-up comedy is it's a bit like sex with your missus, it's just better if you let her get on with it on her own.
This document is pretty awesome, by the way. It filters every kind of heckler response into 9 basic categories, including implying the heckler is drunk, stupid, or simply a total ass, then provides a range of retorts a comedian can use for each one. It's really useful, albeit slightly racist, homophobic, and misogynistic, and it's surprising how many savage heckler put-downs are simply riffs within each of these categories.
I don't believe that shit. Oh, you don't have to. I know you ain't gonna believe it because you fucked up. I don't. Hey. Shit.
Jimmy Carr is the patron saint of this kind of put-down. Half the time he doesn't even hide the fact that his responses are written, like when he brings a paper fortune teller to deliver the put-downs for him.
Well, it says if you want my comeback, you'll have to scrape it off your mum's teeth.
Carr has one of the most intuitive understandings of hecklers in comedy, and his quick wit is just the start. Quick aside, but an important technique in silencing the heckler who wants to be involved, i.e. heckler number 2, is ironically giving them a lot of attention. Ask them lots of questions and make them talk. Phyllis Diller used to get her lighting technician to shine a spotlight on hecklers to make them feel intimidated. It's the same principle here. With the full gaze of the audience, they'll often crumble. And while they're answering questions, you'll have more opportunity to come up with a response. An old stand-up maxim says that no smart person would ever heckle, so make this dummy talk and they'll soon give you ample ammunition. Carr is an absolute demon at this. He'll target hecklers who thought they were safe yelling out from the shadows and make them talk until they've totally embarrassed themselves.
What do you do for a living, sir? Do you mind me asking? You're a student, and what are you studying? You're still in secondary school in Ireland? And what do you want to be when you grow up?
Carr is such a master with hecklers, he regularly performs a heckler amnesty, where he pretty much asks the audience for abuse. It's actually really clever, giving a crowd the chance to see Carr at his brutal best while also making them less likely to heckle during the actual show.
I look like I fucked a pig. Do I still owe your mum money? Is she annoyed, is she? There you go.
Generally, this style of rapid-fire responses is best suited to comedians who want to shut the heckler down quickly, but it can be used in a longer form too. Some comedians have entire bits and even routines up their sleeve which can be pulled out to take the heckler by surprise.
It seems like you don't think this is a comedy show, you don't think I'm funny. You're right. This is an intervention. Myself and everybody else in the community have gotten together to confront you of how we feel when you're a jackass during comedy shows. We'll go around the room saying I statements, how we feel. I'll go first. I feel like you should shut the fuck up.
It also goes to show that sometimes, if you are firm and direct enough, you don't need to be all that funny. Louis C.K. and Bo Burnham have both shut down hecklers by simply telling them to shut up and moving on.
So, I don't care about her. Shut up, idiot. Just shut your fucking mouth. Did you hear me before?
Sometimes they'll even plainly state that this is a rhetorical performance, making it so obvious that hecklers aren't welcome that anyone who does heckle from then on in is clearly out to sabotage the gig.
What? Thank you. Maybe tell me that later, instead of during a performance. So, you're not welcome to speak. I'm trying to make that really clear.
From the way you're acting, you're way less hot than you think you are. Okay. Hey. She broke the fourth wall. It's on her. It's on her. This is theater. If you don't like it, take it up with the Greeks, bitch. All right? This is me yelling into your pussy. Hello! I think I left my keys in there.
George Carlin is just as curt, although about 400 times more ruthless. Seriously, listening to him take a heckler down is like watching a tiger throw a goat onto a bonfire.
So fuck you and your sister and your wife. If you got a kid, I hope your fucking kid dies in a car fire. How do you like that, you stupid cocksucker? Shut the fuck up and get the fuck out of here.
Now look, Carlin is God, no one is denying that, but I would say Carlin can get away with this at least in part because he's Carlin. He's performing in front of a theatre of his fans. If you deployed such a ruthless onslaught of insults in a comedy club, the audience is probably going to turn on you. This speaks to a common mistake comedians make, which is they too quickly go on the attack. Like some PTSD-riddled war veteran, when a heckler calls out, they flash back to all their horrific previous experiences and immediately go in for the kill.
They don't know your context. They don't understand the repetition and the writing and the shit you've eaten to get to this point.
Yeah.
But if you bring all that baggage into that moment,
it's not gonna get a laugh. That's
Yeah.
all you're there for.
And so your job is to let all that go.
I just respond wildly to them. And they might be saying, "Oh, Billy, I love you." And I say, "Shut the fuck up!"
This brings us to a pretty crucial point. Defeating a heckler isn't so much about shutting them down as it is keeping the audience on your side. If you're too cruel, too savage too soon, the audience is going to turn on you and you're going to throw the gig. Paul F. Tompkins describes this realization perfectly.
When I first started out, anyone that said anything, I was so rattled by it that I would attack that person and try to shut them down and assert my dominance, over the room. Like, I'm in charge, I'm the guy with the microphone. And it took me a while, but then I realized, oh, sometimes people are just, they're forgetting themselves. They're agreeing with a thing that you said. They're trying to add on to an idea that you just put out there. And then I realized, anytime anything like that happens, this is an opportunity for more fun.
This is the perfect mindset to have. You want to be playful, at least until you know what kind of heckler you're dealing with. Which nicely brings us to Bill Burr. Dealing with hecklers requires you to do about 20 things at once. You have to shut the heckler down, keep the audience on your side, stay in control of the room, and be funny the whole time. It's a tightrope walk in hell, and Burr makes it look effortless. Let's take an example from the punchline in Atlanta.
You're welcome! Thank you for not just laughing. Thank you for verbally letting me know that you appreciated that. Thank you!
I mean, this is hardly a heckle, but Burr handles it beautifully. It's right at the start of his set and he targets it. He makes it clear that this is pretty strange, unacceptable behavior, but in a completely good-natured way. He then builds it into a brilliant piece of reactive comedy.
She either has no stairs in her house or someone doesn't know how to walk up them. That's that voice. Did you call? Did you call the plumber? Thank you! That's when she said it. She said it not like I was 10 feet away. She said it like I was downstairs in the rec room. Changing a fuse or something. That's not it! Oh, it's still not working!
The great thing about this put down is it doesn't really seem like a put down. Yes, Burr is making fun of the heckler, but he never comes across as mean or vindictive. Instead, he banters with her, he finds something silly in the heckle, latches onto it, and blows it out of proportion. In this case, Burr takes the volume of the heckler and uses it to create an entire character and situation. He connects how the heckler is acting now to how she would behave in the real world, turning her into some hilariously lazy housewife. How Burr does this so effortlessly is beyond me, and the speed of his response can only be attributed to decades on the road. But we can still learn a lesson here. If a heckler calls out, take what they've said and run with it. Impersonate or exaggerate it. Find something silly in the heckle that you can play with, or compare how they're acting now to how they would behave in the real world.
I'd hate to see you at a funeral or a wedding or something, you know? You skinhead! Oh shit, I'm sorry, man. It was like 20 seconds of quiet. I thought I was gonna shit my pants. I got real scared.
This mindset comes in really handy on the rare occasion the heckler does say something funny, because you can take what they've said and build upon it. Instead of looking petty by shutting them down straight away.
You're disabled. I'm a carer. And you're her carer.
Let them have their victory, laugh along, then take their heckle in another direction. Or, if you're good enough, turn it back around on them.
Oh, God! Oh, no. Did you see that bit on telly the other day when Russell Howard's career ended? It was amazing.
Burr, along with other excellent improvisers like Andrew Schultz, are smart enough to outwit a heckler instead of humiliate them. They're playful, and will only turn savage when the heckler makes continual disruptions.
You're not smart. I don't think you're smart.
Or is clearly out to sabotage the gig, by which time the audience is well and truly on their side.
It's also a covert defense mechanism, because if I let this person talk, and then they reveal themselves to be someone who does want to ruin the show, now everybody is on my side because I've been nice so far. So it's win-win, because it's either we're going to have a fun conversation with this strange person who started talking, or I will give this jerk enough rope to hang himself, and then the audience will be on my side when I do have to shut him down.
And at one point, a guy yelled out, "You're a piece of shit." And my big comeback for "you're a piece of shit" was, "Sir, if I didn't know any better, I'd swear you were trying to hurt my feelings."
Okay, but what does shutting the heckler down look like? Well, instead of bantering them to death, take the energy out of the room. As we've noted, playfulness has its limits, and after constant interruptions, sometimes the best thing you can do is send a clear message to the elephant in the room.
I can only put up with so much. I know some guys, have a way of doing it that keeps people always laughing, but sometimes I think it's really more effective to get it really quiet and let the person know that it's not fucking cool,
Dimitri Martin and Eddie Izzard grind the gig to a halt to focus on the heckler. They even rope the audience in to let them know how outnumbered they are.
I prepared a set, I have jokes, we could spend the night having a stupid conversation, but I think it's, I know my set, I'll go do it somewhere else tomorrow, but I don't think everyone here's coming with me, so I'd rather just tell the jokes there.
It bears repeating, this is when you have no other option. This is Launch the Nuke's final showdown, either you die or I do behavior.
Round 1, fight.
The audience has to be as fed up with the heckler as you are. Trust me, if you're bombing at an open mic, there's nothing worse than asking the audience whose side they're on and watching them all unanimously side with the heckler.
Here's the key to throwing people out. The crowd has to want those people to go. You can't do it yourself because the crowd will go, this guy is a dictator, he's a fucking dick, but you have to kick him out.
Paid to get in.
Exactly.
This guy
They'll turn on you. So you have to get to the point where the crowd's like, oh, come on.
This brings us to the final, and personally, my favourite way to handle a heckler, which is to do the exact opposite of what you're supposed to. It's what I have labelled the Ghandi technique. In other words, non-violent self-defense. Every technique we have looked at so far is about being quick. It's about having a snappy response, great banter, and immaculate timing.
Just destroyed you. That's my #1 fan, and I fucking shredded him.
For comedians out there like me, you may not be gifted with these abilities. While you're trying to work on them, you can do this. When a heckler calls out, react with complete sincerity. A heckler is expecting a reaction from you. Don't give it to them, don't play the game. Instead, tap out, lift your white little surrender flag and wave it around, and watch how the heckler, with no rational place to channel their anger, gets more confused and frustrated.
I found the very best response in that situation is to just say, I'm sorry you feel that way. There's really not much conversation after that, because they never say, but really, you're not funny or you're ugly. I just, I'm sorry you feel that way.
This is brilliant because it removes any pressure you have on yourself to be funny. In fact, you may get laughs from how shamelessly you throw in the towel. Laurie Kilmartin does this wonderfully, even adding a tasty bit of reverse psychology. She just agrees with the heckler, over and over again, until they've gone.
I know, we're terrible, we're not funny. I know.
Really, you're being very disrespectful.
I know, ma'am, I apologize. You should walk out on me. Seriously, you guys deserve better. You guys deserve better. You should walk out on me. Okay, I will get my teeth fixed, thank you. Fuck yeah!
This technique is obviously for Heckler 3, but with a few tweaks can be used in a variety of situations. How about you take the heckler's side or become a source of counsel? Ask a question that stares into the very heart of their soul.
Maybe we should not worry about me not being funny and worry about what's really going on inside there. Let's talk about it.
Norm Macdonald somehow manages to turn an abusive heckle into a scene from a romantic comedy, asking without judgment the mistakes the heckler made that led him to this point.
No, Norm, I love you, baby. That's why I'm here. So shut up.
Why you tell him shut up? At least you say I love me. Well, that's thanks, man. That's cool that you love me. Because it's cool to love someone, even if you don't think they're fine. You should love someone even if they disappoint you.
In a Reddit AMA, Jerry Seinfeld identified himself as a heckle therapist, saying, "When someone said something nasty, I would immediately become sympathetic and try to help with their problem. It would really discombobulate the heckler because I wouldn't go against them. I would take their side.
Discombobulate.
Unfortunately, I couldn't find any footage of Jerry putting this technique into action, but I did find footage of him getting heckled by Mr. Meeseeks, so I thought I'd play that instead.
I didn't understand you, sir. No, I was right the first time. I don't understand you.
Stuart Lee takes this to another level of derangement. He calls it absorbing heckles like a soft target, where you answer the heckler less like a comedian and more like a jaded geography teacher. The idea being the sheer awe-inspiring tedium of the answer will make the heckler leave, or put them to sleep.
Another way of controlling a room, which again can lead to fantastic deaths, but really enjoyable ones, is to treat abusive heckles as if they were genuine inquiries. From the simple one like, why don't you fuck off, to answer that in terms of you're contractually obliged to stay there, you have financial responsibilities over and ongoing with mortgage, family, and that there is a certain amount of time that you're required to fulfill. To treat things as genuine inquiries, and actually to answer them at such length that the people regret having asked the question in the first place.
It's sort of funny to sympathise with their inability to enjoy the show.
That's right, to humanise them. Yeah. Right.
And to apologise.
It must be very difficult for you.
Yeah,
it's so sad.
You know, I do apologise that this is what I do, and it's not possible for me to change it.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I can't change my act. This is it. I can't. Well, I understand that you're disappointed that you've given up the time to come, but it's not what you. Huh? I know, but I can't do something else now. This is what I do, and I can't. There's not time to construct a bespoke act based around you.
Look, obviously this isn't an exact science, and every heckler situation is different, but I hope what I have done is give you a smorgasbord of options that you can chew over. Also, and I know it's the height of irony putting this at the end of a 30-minute video, but you can always ignore them. Dealing with a heckler is a potentially volatile situation, and if you're unsure what to do, ploughing ahead can be the best choice. You also want to think about how you as a comedian would handle a heckler. Norm Macdonald isn't going to whip out a savage one-liner because it's completely at odds with his old man with dementia stage persona. Think about what style works for you. And for all the hecklers out there, if you really hate what a comedian's doing, don't heckle, because you're going to make things worse. Instead, communicate with the comedian in a way they actually value.
Here's how you destroy a comedian, though. Sit right up front and never laugh one time. The rest of the audience cheering, you never laugh. Just... And every couple of minutes, shake your head just a little bit.
You will see that person who's sitting there and just looking, first they're looking at you as if you like killed something. You came over and you were in their yard and you like gutted their cat. And they're just looking at you with a withering stare. And what happens is then you go back to them. There's 98% of the room is laughing, and you're fixated on this dipshit.
Whether hecklers are good for comedy is another question entirely. In my experience, they can turn a good gig into a great one, and a bad gig into a nightmare. But while we allow alcohol to be served and bachelorette parties to be legal, heckling is part of the job. May God have mercy on us all.
Hey, you remind me of Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston doesn't tell jokes.
Well?
Look, I
I'm good enough to play the palace.
You're not good enough to clean the palace.
Didn't you like my last joke?
Yes, if you promise it's your last joke.
So many motherfuckers fucking in my shed. There's too many motherfuckers fucking in my shed.
I remember an old lady walked to the front of the stage and said, why don't you go away? It wasn't even a heckle. I don't think she had the strength to heckle. And I said to her, I remember, well, you'll never see another strawberry season anyway. And there was booing from the crowd. I mean, everything I did. I looked to the wings. There was the DJ, the owner of the club, and the guy who was at that time calling himself my agent, going, come on. And I was thinking, now the next gag will turn it round.
Everybody come on. Yeah. So many motherfuckers fucking in my